The present I hold only in contempt, for it is now and always now, whereas the past embroiders on itself with recollection's corners worn by time. The future holds its openness unwrit. It is a breath that has yet to be breathed, or that of death to suffocate diseased, when what was planned reveals the opposite. Now's sad stone certainty I scrutinize, or as the times of joy just seem to fleet, sit back on life, relax, and close your eyes, until nostalgia brings life back complete. Is that okay?
Is that okay?
When I was an old man, many moons ago, regrets and fears would cloud my years. I had no space to grow. But now the clouds are parting, it feels like spring has sprung. I'm learning how to live life, and I'm nearly almost young.
And everyone else is fucked up like us.
The earliest memory I have of my dad, he was away in Germany working for German TV, and he came back and wanted to pick me up or hug me, and I remember just hiding behind my mum's legs saying, I don't like that man. But my earliest memories of about when I was about 4 years old was my dad could be quite disapproving. I'd go to my grandma's house and she'd put on eyeliner and I'd put on her clothes, and I had to get rid of all of the makeup because my dad would be very disapproving of if he caught any traces of me wearing makeup, which he sometimes did.
Lies of the Father and the sins of the Son, and I don't care if you don't like me, and I see why you want to.
To put things in perspective, my dad was an older father. He was already in his 50s when I was a young child. He'd been through the Marines. He'd been a struggling writer for years, but his second wife had died of a mysterious illness. So he was still grieving the loss of his second wife when I was a kid. The Marines had taught him to repress his emotions, and he found it very hard to empathize with us as young children. And it was only through me finding an interest in pirates and things that he could see as kind of nautical, which also allowed me to dress up without him thinking it was too feminine. Though I used to walk on the beach and pretend I was flat-footed, so I wouldn't have to join the Marines.
From that my friend, ends a partnership that should never have begun.
Yeah, what was so fascinating about my dad in retrospect was that even though he seemed to see anything effeminate or pertaining to women as not being serious or right for a boy, he managed to put himself psychologically in the mindset of teenage girls, and in writing columns for Jackie magazine, which was really his bread and butter from the late 60s to the early 80s. Sadly, after his wife died, he got writer's block and found it increasingly harder to write these articles. But he was writing every day, and they were being published every week.
Next is...
Oh, you tell me.
Screwed Love.
So I'm treading on your set list.
If I put your new songs on
because they're not laminated.
I can't laminate.
Okay, I would say that certainly with the Flesh happening, I was hugely into the Velvet Underground, hugely into Bowie. But the thing I was getting from all of these people was to allow yourself to be a melting pot of influences. The thing I got from Bowie was to keep reinventing yourself, to not settle into one thing, to keep looking for things outside of the box. When I formed Pink Narcissus, I met a guitarist who was a Jane's Addiction fan, and when I was his age, he was 19 at the time, they were my favourite band. But I said to him, if you want to be like them, you don't just copy their sound. We need to just keep that melting pot of influences open rather than just becoming a third-rate carbon copy of that band.
When you're down, this true love. This good love. This true love. This good love.
I would describe my style as a musician or a singer-songwriter as closer to the French tradition than the English. The French have a thing where they where it's all about the lyrics and the poetry, which is extremely visceral, often confessional, and it's very lyric-based. And the thing I don't have qualms with is like making an audience feel uncomfortable. It's almost like disemboweling yourself on stage and rubbing it in people's faces, and I could bring that to punk, but it definitely has its roots in more the French tradition than English or American. So I would try and become a melting pot of all of that. But I also don't really like to define myself too much. I don't really believe in genres. Part of what eroded my parents' relationship was the fact that my mum was so young when she when she married my dad. She was 17 years younger than he was, and she was taking on board a grieving man and his grieving children. So I think my mum in her early 20s, she'd seen The Sound of Music a few too many times and probably thought they'd all go skipping over the hills and everything would be fine, when in fact things weren't quite so perfect.
Oh, brother, tears. That just solves everything.
I think my mum resented my dad for quite a long time because she felt trapped. but they stayed together for the sake of, for the sake of the kids. I was sent off to university really so my parents could divorce. So I lost the house that I grew up in, my parents being together and everything all at the same time. There was a real sense of loss then, and that's when I started to spiral down.
But I'm afraid it ain't gonna be too good. Cause old Pappy used to do this when he was a little old boy in short pants.
By the time I went to university, they weren't so impressed with figurative or even surrealist type paintings, so I was put down as more of a conceptual artist, which I managed to do because I created the kind of art that I thought they would want me to do, but my heart wasn't really in it then, and that was about the same time I started self-destructing. So when I hit rock bottom, I abandoned the visual art and moved into areas where I hadn't been formally educated, which was writing and music.
When I was an old man, many moons ago, regrets and fears would cloud my years. I had no space to grow. But now the clouds are parting, it feels like spring has sprung. I'm learning how to...
My niece, who was 2 years old, had come back from nursery school, and my sister said, "Oh, Matilda's learnt a song, sing it to your uncle." And she went, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are!" And I just thought, okay, if I can't sing, that might work with punk rock if I just sing with the lack of inhibition of a 2-year-old girl. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. What kind of instrument do you think that would be good for? Nirvana opened the doors for everything, and Kurt Cobain said that he didn't want homophobic people to be fans of his band. So it drew a very clear line that if you're into this music, you don't behave like that. That was when I started to get a sense of belonging and identity, was through getting into music.
Track a little louder, please.
The album I'm working on now, Gaslight Illuminations, is definitely closer musically to the French tradition than anything I've done before, because I don't play an instrument and there are more rock guitarists. I find myself doing the rock thing, but now I'm more in control and able to call the shots and convey the ideas that are in my head. So that's what's happening with the new album. Come back in here. In fact, most of the bands I've been in have worked because I've given everyone creative freedom, but it's mostly about the music. Then I put my lyrics to it. If any of the musicians have any ideas, then that's great. Best idea rises to the surface. But normally when it comes to lyrics, that's definitely my thing. When I got the diagnosis, I was initially kind of stunned. I remember just saying to my friend Karina, who I was with, let's just go to the pub. I wouldn't say I was really in touch with the implications of it, but at the time, as far as we knew, it was a death sentence. So I was told by the doctors that I could go 10 years without my viral load increasing and having to start on the antiretrovirals. But I was self-destructing so much that within a year I was in need of taking the antiretrovirals. My mum drove me up to London on the day that my niece was born, and that's when they said that I was seriously ill and I was checked into hospital. Eventually they found tuberculosis, and soon after that I had an infection of the sac that surrounds the heart, which is a pericardial effusion, where they had to put wires underneath my rib cage to syringe the fluid out, which was crushing my heart. It attacks you on many different levels, so that would have been an AIDS-defining illness then, but I think at the time we didn't know that AIDS was something you could recover from. A doctor came to me and said, you do know you're within your rights to turn down this medication we're giving you, and I would have been dead within a week or two. I was so frail at that point. I could have said, I don't want the medication, I'm ready to die, and I thought I wanted to die prior to that. But that was the first realization that I wanted to live, and from that I thought, if I am going to take this choice to live, then I have to do something positive with my life. So I decided to write a book, which became, and then at the book launch I jammed with a friend's band, and that's how the music started. My dad owned up, he apologized for some of the things he said, he owned up to everything, and we had such a great, we ended up having such a great relationship in the end. I was because I'd come so close to death myself, when he was in hospital in the last months, in the nursing home, he used to ask for me, and I'd rush over from Brighton and wheel him down to the bar, and the nurses said that he perked up and would start eating again after I visited. So I was really honoured to be given that position, and since his passing, I've realised how much he gave me as a writer, and how much he nurtured my originality, or encouraged that, regardless of some of his homophobic statements when I was young. When I started with The Flesh Happening, as far as I knew, every gig could be the last thing I ever did. I'd come so close to death that I felt that I could be back in that situation any time. So I wanted to leave an impact. The thing was, yeah, we won round the right people, and the people we alienated, I really couldn't give a fuck about. They walked out the door, and sometimes I'd chase after them, pinch their bum. Men I'm talking about, actually, more than women.
I got it. Yeah.
Success is defined in terms of knowing that you have an impact and an influence, even if it's not you on the cover of the magazines. If you've gone on to influence other people who've been recognised, then for me that's a validation of sorts. But eventually I'd like to be in a situation where I can sustain myself with the creativity and not have to worry and struggle all the time. I realise how prevalent hypocrisy is, but I always tried to be honest and own up to things, and part of that was like realising that, you know, this is who I am. I felt like that was encouraged by my mum up to a point. So yeah, be yourself, you know. And then she was a bit like, oh, I took it a bit further than she expected.
I'm